stop being nice all the time, it's slowly destroying your confidence. If your entire strategy in life is making everyone happy, there's a hard truth you need to hear. People often think constant kindness is a sign of confidence. In reality, it can be the opposite. When your happiness depends on other people's approval, you're handing them control over your emotions. Every compliment lifts you up. Every criticism tears you down. That's not confidence, it's dependence. The reason this happens is simple. Deep down, you may not fully trust your own value. So instead of defining yourself, you wait for other people to define you. Ironically, people notice this much faster than you think. Human beings are surprisingly good at sensing insecurity. It's rarely about what you say, it's reflected in your body language, your decisions, your hesitation, and the way you constantly seek reassurance. Trying too hard to be liked often communicates something you never intended, that you're afraid of rejection. And fear isn't attractive. This doesn't mean you should become rude, cold, or disrespectful. It means your kindness should come from choice, not from fear. Healthy people know when to say yes, but they also know when to say no. They understand the importance of boundaries. They don't feel guilty for protecting their time, their attention, or their self-respect. Sometimes the strongest message you can send isn't chasing someone's approval. It's showing that your life doesn't revolve around earning it. When people realize they can't manipulate your behavior through approval or rejection, they begin to see you differently. That's because genuine confidence isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the ability to stay true to yourself even when someone else doesn't validate you. One of the biggest mistakes many people make in relationships is believing that constant attention automatically creates attraction. It doesn't. Think about someone who's deeply driven. They're focused on their career, their mission, or a goal that's bigger than themselves. When they willingly pause that focus for someone they genuinely care about, it sends a powerful message. You're important enough to have my full attention. That kind of attention feels meaningful because it's intentional, not automatic. In healthy relationships, attention isn't just about being physically present, it's about making the other person feel seen, putting your phone away, listening without distractions, noticing the little things, and expressing genuine appreciation often have a stronger impact than expensive gifts or dramatic gestures. At the same time, many people confuse being nice with being attractive. They're not the same thing. Trying to please everyone usually comes from fear, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, or fear of not being enough. Real confidence doesn't need constant approval. It knows when to be warm, when to create boundaries, and when to value its own time. Another quality that naturally attracts people is generosity. That doesn't necessarily mean spending money. It means being generous with your attention, your energy, your curiosity, and your presence. When you're fully engaged with someone, they feel valued, but generosity also needs balance. If you give nonstop without maintaining your own life, it can start looking like neediness instead of confidence. The healthiest relationships are built between two people who both have meaningful lives outside the relationship and choose to invest in each other. It's also worth remembering that every individual is different. While there may be broad psychological patterns, no book or online advice can replace paying attention to the unique person in front of you. The strongest social skills come from observation, empathy, and genuine curiosity, not from memorizing scripts or tricks. Many people wonder why dating seems more difficult today. There are probably many reasons. Technology offers endless digital stimulation, social media encourages comparison, and many people face financial uncertainty and chronic stress. Anxiety makes it harder to be open, vulnerable, and confident around others. Ultimately, meaningful attraction grows from emotional security, authenticity, and genuine connection, not from manipulation or pretending to be someone you're not. Why so many men feel lost today? There's a growing feeling among many young men that something is missing. They work hard, spend hours online, consume endless advice, and yet still feel uncertain about themselves. Confidence feels harder to build, relationships seem more complicated, and many don't know what kind of man they're supposed to become. Part of the problem is that modern life constantly pulls attention away from reality. Instead of developing real world confidence through meaningful challenges, It's easy to retreat into digital distractions that provide instant comfort without requiring personal growth. Confidence, however, doesn't come from comfort. It comes from proving to yourself that you can overcome difficult things. That's why genuine strength rarely announces itself. Truly confident people don't need to dominate conversations, intimidate others, or constantly remind everyone how powerful they are. Their actions speak for them. Real strength is quiet. It's taking responsibility when things go wrong. It's remaining calm under pressure. It's keeping your word even when nobody is watching. Aggression also gets misunderstood. Aggression itself isn't the enemy, it's simply energy. The question is where that energy goes. Left unchecked, it can become anger, resentment, or destructive behavior. Directed with purpose, it becomes ambition, discipline, competitiveness, and the determination to master a craft. History's greatest builders, inventors, entrepreneurs, artists, and athletes all shared one common trait. They refused to stay average. Healthy ambition isn't selfish, it's the force that pushes civilization forward. The challenge isn't eliminating competitive instincts, it's learning how to channel them into something meaningful. The same principle applies to boredom. Most people believe they're bored because their life lacks excitement. They think another vacation, another relationship, another job, or another hobby will finally make them feel alive. Sometimes those changes help, but often boredom points towards something deeper. It signals a disconnect between the life you're living and the person you truly are. Many people spend years following expectations that belong to someone else, their parents, friends, society, or social media. They chase careers they don't enjoy. They pursue goals they never chose. They compare themselves to lives that only exist online. Eventually, everything starts to feel empty. The answer isn't always more stimulation. Sometimes the answer is more self-awareness. When you understand what naturally excites you, what you're curious about, and what gives you a sense of purpose, motivation becomes much easier to sustain. Instead of constantly escaping your life, you begin building one that genuinely fits who you are, because the opposite of boredom isn't endless entertainment, it's meaningful engagement. When your work, relationships, and goals align with your values, life stops feeling like something you have to survive and starts feeling like something worth investing in. The hardest person you'll ever have to understand is yourself. Most people believe the answer to feeling stuck is changing something outside themselves. A new job, a new city, a new relationship, a new hobby, maybe even a completely different lifestyle. For a little while, those changes feel exciting. Everything is fresh, unfamiliar, and full of possibility, but eventually the excitement fades, the same emptiness returns, not because the opportunity was wrong, but because the real problem came along for the ride. That isn't meant as an insult. It's actually one of the most empowering truths you'll ever discover. Many of us spend years searching for external solutions to internal problems. We assume happiness is waiting somewhere else, when in reality we're carrying the same fears, insecurities, and habits into every new chapter of life. Real transformation starts when you stop asking, "What should I change around me?" and begin asking, "What needs to change inside me?" That's the question most people avoid. Looking inward isn't comfortable. It forces you to confront beliefs you'd rather ignore. It reveals habits that sabotage your progress. It exposes the stories you've been telling yourself for years. And that's exactly why so few people do it. It's much easier to search for another motivational video, another productivity hack, or another quick fix than it is to sit quietly with your own thoughts. But awareness is where growth begins. The moment you recognize your own patterns, you gain the power to change them. One of the most useful habits you can develop is becoming curious whenever a strong emotion appears. Instead of immediately reacting, ask yourself, why did that affect me so much? Anger often hides insecurity. Jealousy can reveal unmet desires. Defensiveness may point toward a fear you've never fully acknowledged. The emotion itself isn't the enemy, it's a signal. Most people stop at the feeling. Few people investigate the cause. That's why the same arguments repeat, the same mistakes repeat, the same disappointments repeat. Nothing changes until the pattern becomes visible. Another uncomfortable truth is that we're often quickest to criticize the traits we secretly struggle with ourselves. The qualities that irritate us most in others sometimes reflect parts of ourselves we haven't accepted yet. Recognizing that takes humility, but it also builds empathy. You stop seeing people as enemies and start understanding that everyone is fighting invisible battles, including you. The challenge is that self examination isn't easy. Our minds naturally avoid discomfort. We prefer distractions over difficult conversations with ourselves. That's why many people only begin changing after life forces them to. A failed relationship, a career setback, a personal crisis. Rock bottom has a way of removing excuses, but it doesn't have to reach that point. You can choose growth before pain makes the decision for you. The people who make the biggest improvements aren't always the smartest. They're the ones willing to be brutally honest with themselves. Because lasting change isn't just about learning more, it's about becoming someone who is willing to face uncomfortable truths and grow because of them. Fear is the invisible force controlling your life. Most people think the biggest obstacle to success is a lack of knowledge. It's not. More often than not, it's fear. The problem is that fear rarely announces itself. It doesn't always feel like panic. Sometimes it disguises itself as procrastination. Sometimes it looks like perfectionism. Sometimes it sounds like I'll start when I'm more prepared. On the surface, those excuses seem reasonable. Underneath them is the same emotion: fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of discovering you're not as capable as you hoped. Every decision you make is influenced by one of two emotional forces. One expands your world, the other shrinks it: curiosity, confidence, courage. Those emotions push you toward opportunity. Then there are emotions that pull you in the opposite direction: fear, ego, impatience, resentment. These don't just affect your mood, they narrow your perspective. When you're afraid, you stop taking risks, you stop asking questions, you stop listening. Instead of exploring reality, you cling to certainty because certainty feels safe. That's why fear is so dangerous. It quietly convinces you that you've already figured everything out. The moment you believe you already know enough, you stop learning. And in a world that's changing faster than ever before, standing still is often the fastest way to fall behind. Real growth requires something uncomfortable. It requires admitting that your current understanding might be incomplete, that your first impression could be wrong, that people change, that circumstances evolve, and that your old beliefs may no longer fit the present. This isn't weakness. It's intellectual humility. The strongest people aren't the ones who always have the answers. They're the ones who remain curious long after everyone else has become certain. That's especially important when dealing with other people. We naturally place labels on everyone we meet. We decide who they are after only a few interactions. Then, without realizing it, we continue treating them as if they never change. But people are constantly evolving. If you stop paying attention, you're no longer responding to the person standing in front of you. You're responding to a memory. Curiosity keeps relationships alive. Assumptions slowly destroy them. The same principle applies to society. Periods of rapid change can feel uncomfortable. Some changes create progress, others create confusion. The challenge isn't accepting every new idea without question. It's developing enough confidence to examine ideas calmly instead of reacting emotionally. When people feel powerless, they often search for quick ways to feel important. Sometimes that means attacking others instead of improving themselves. It's easier to criticize than to grow. It's easier to blame than to build. But lasting confidence never comes from controlling other people. It comes from mastering yourself. The more secure you become internally, the less threatened you feel by different opinions, unexpected change, or uncomfortable conversations. That's the mindset that allows you to keep learning while everyone else is busy defending their ego. Stop letting the moment fool you. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that the present moment tells the whole story. It doesn't. Every generation eventually reaches a point where it thinks, this is how the world will be forever. History says otherwise. Ideas rise, ideas fall, movements grow stronger, then they lose momentum. Cultures constantly swing between different extremes before settling into a new balance. That's why it's dangerous to judge the future based only on today's headlines. When emotions run high, everything feels permanent, but very little actually is. This doesn't mean every social change is harmless. Some changes create real problems. Some ideas divide people instead of bringing them together. Some periods in history have produced consequences that lasted for decades. Ignoring those risks would be naive, but panic isn't the answer either. The more productive question is, what can you actually control? You probably can't change millions of people overnight. You can't force society to become more reasonable. You can't stop every trend that spreads across the internet. What you can do is strengthen your own thinking. That's where real influence begins, one person, one conversation, one decision at a time. Another challenge we face today is that our attention has become a product. Every notification competes for your emotions. Every headline wants a reaction. Every platform benefits when you stay angry, fearful, or outraged just a little longer. Because emotional people stay engaged, and engaged people keep scrolling. The business model isn't built around helping you think clearly, it's built around keeping your attention. That's why the most emotionally charged content usually spreads the fastest: fear, conflict, envy, outrage. These emotions are powerful because they're deeply wired into human psychology. Long before social media existed, our brains were already designed to notice threats, compare ourselves with others, and react quickly to emotionally significant information. Technology didn't invent those instincts, it simply learned how to amplify them. The first step toward protecting yourself is recognizing that you're not immune. Everyone likes to believe they're thinking independently. But the truth is, every one of us is influenced by the information we consume. The difference is that self aware people admit it. Instead of asking, how can I change everyone else? They begin asking, how can I become harder to manipulate? That shift changes everything. It encourages you to question your immediate reactions, to slow down before sharing information, to separate facts from emotional impulses, and to become more intentional about what deserves your attention. In a world competing for your mind every second of the day, your ability to think independently may become one of the most valuable skills you ever develop. Because the greatest freedom isn't saying whatever you want, it's knowing that your thoughts genuinely belong to you. The emotion that's quietly running your life, there's an emotion that shapes more decisions than most people realize. It rarely announces itself. It hides behind criticism. It disguises itself as frustration. Sometimes it even pretends to be ambition. That emotion is comparison. From the moment we're young, our brains naturally measure ourselves against the people around us. Who has more success? Who gets more attention? Who's making more money? Who's happier? The problem isn't comparison itself. The problem is what happens when you believe someone else's success says something about your worth. Today, that trap is everywhere. Open your phone for 5 minutes and you'll see luxury vacations, perfect relationships, incredible physiques, dream careers, and lives that appear effortless. What you don't see are the failures, the anxiety, the loneliness, and the ordinary moments that make up most of reality. You're comparing your entire life to someone else's highlight reel. No wonder so many people feel like they're falling behind. The first step toward freedom is recognizing when comparison has taken over your thinking. Because once you notice it, you can stop letting it control your decisions. Instead of asking, why do they have more than me? Ask, what can I learn from them? That single shift turns envy into inspiration. But none of this is possible without honesty. Real growth begins the moment you're willing to admit that you don't fully understand yourself. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. The most dangerous people are often the ones who believe they've already figured themselves out. The, the strongest people remain curious about their own behavior. They ask difficult questions. Why did that criticism bother me? Why do I always react the same way? Why do certain situations trigger me more than others? Every honest answer gives you a little more freedom. You'll probably never understand yourself completely, and that's okay. Human beings are incredibly complex. There will always be parts of your personality that remain mysterious. The goal isn't perfection, the goal is progress. Every bit of self awareness expands your options. When your ego controls every decision, your world becomes smaller. You defend your opinions instead of improving them. You protect your pride instead of learning. You repeat familiar patterns because they feel safe. But when you become less attached to always being right, something remarkable happens. New possibilities appear. You listen more carefully. You adapt more quickly. You respond instead of reacting. Life becomes less predictable and far more rewarding. That's where real influence begins, not by controlling other people, by mastering yourself. And if you're feeling stuck today, remember this: no one is coming to rescue you. Not a motivational video, not a mentor, not a perfect opportunity. Those things can guide you, but they can't do the work for you. Real change only happens when your desire to grow becomes stronger than your desire to stay comfortable. Habits are powerful. Comfort is addictive. That's why lasting transformation almost always starts with a decision that says, I'm done living on autopilot, because the life you've always imagined isn't built through one dramatic breakthrough. It's built through hundreds of small choices that move you forward, especially on the days when you don't feel like taking the next step. Your greatest advantage is running out. Every day, most people live as if they have unlimited time. They tell themselves they'll start next month, next year, after things calm down, after they feel more confident. But life doesn't pause while you prepare. Every day that passes becomes part of your past, and none of it can be recovered. That's why the biggest mistake isn't failing, it's waiting. Waiting feels safe because it avoids immediate discomfort. But over time, the cost becomes enormous. The dreams that once felt exciting slowly become distant memories. The habits you repeat become your identity. And before you realize it, you're living a life you never intentionally chose. The earlier you recognize this, the more control you still have. Time is one of the few resources that never increases. Spend it carelessly, and no amount of success can buy it back. But urgency alone isn't enough. You also need resilience. Most people see obstacles as signs they're moving in the wrong direction. In reality, obstacles are often proof that you're growing. Think about how the body becomes stronger. Muscles don't grow because they're comfortable. They grow because they're challenged. Every repetition creates resistance. Every difficult workout forces adaptation. Your mind works the same way. Challenges strengthen qualities that comfort never can. Patience, confidence, emotional control. Without resistance, those qualities remain weak. The modern world, however, presents a different kind of challenge. It's not just physical resistance anymore, it's psychological. Every day you're surrounded by distractions competing for your attention: notifications, endless videos, breaking news, arguments, entertainment that never ends. None of these things ask for much individually, but together they slowly train your brain to crave constant stimulation. The result? Focusing on one meaningful task becomes surprisingly difficult, and focus is one of the greatest competitive advantages left. While most people divide their attention across dozens of distractions, those who learn to concentrate deeply continue making progress. That's why protecting your attention is just as important as protecting your health. Most people understand they shouldn't eat junk food every hour, yet many consume mental junk from the moment they wake up until they go to sleep. Your brain has limits. It can't absorb endless information without becoming overwhelmed. Every unnecessary distraction takes away energy that could have been invested somewhere meaningful. So become more selective. Choose what deserves your attention. Protect your mornings. Create space for uninterrupted work. Allow your mind to become comfortable with silence again. Because success rarely belongs to the person who knows the most. It usually belongs to the person who can stay focused long enough to turn knowledge into action. In a world designed to scatter your attention, the ability to concentrate may become your greatest superpower.